I believe this occurred a few years ago when my folks were driving themselves, me and my siblings, on a road trip from Texas to New York to visit family. At one point, which I believe was our first stop on the trip, we ended up at a McDonald's for either lunch or dinner. We all ordered what we wanted, and my mom, siblings, and I all went to go pick a table while my dad waited at the counter for our food. A table or two across from us, I noticed an old man sitting by himself. I remember the surrounding tables were empty, so he was just the first thing I noticed, and evidently would keep my attention until we left. I don't remember if he had any food, but he was just minding his own business. A few times he looked around and at our table, kind of just in our general direction, it seemed. Eventually, my dad came with the food and sat down with the rest of us, and we all began to unpack our food and poke straws into our drinks. We were making casual conversation as we did so. It was at this point we all turned our attention a few tables away to the old man after hearing what sounded like loud muttering. He was saying something unintelligible, staring at us, his eyes as wide as could be. It no longer appeared he was looking in our general direction, but right at us, speaking what sounded like angry gibberish between gritted teeth. We all had stopped talking at this point and tried not to stare back, awkwardly taking hesitant bites of our food. After a minute, one of us attempted to strike up a conversation again, but it was definitely hard to do with this old guy making a scene that was obviously directed at us. It seemed after a couple minutes of this weird behavior, the old guy had quieted down some. He was still talking, but it was quiet and to himself. One of my siblings asked if they could go have some ketchup for their fries. My mom didn't really want them going and getting it by themselves because she was super protective of her children, especially the younger of us. So my mom stood and walked over to where the ketchup was. The old man watched my mom go get the ketchup. The entire time, his eyes wide and staring again. He was quiet until she started to come back. The closer she got to our table, the louder his muttering got again. He sounded livid now and very intimidating. At that moment, I worried something was about to happen. Now my dad had definitely had enough. He got up and walked over to the old man's table and said, "Do we have a problem?" As calm but as stern as he could. I think he said some other things to him as well, but much quieter as to not attract other people. The old man was still wide-eyed, and now his arms and legs were twitching. After a solid moment, the old man shook his head no. After my dad gave him a stern look in the eye, as to make sure the guy knew he wasn't playing games, he returned to our table. We were told to hurry up and finish eating, because my dad wanted to leave now. The atmosphere felt tense now. No one conversed after this point. Another 2 or 3 minutes passed, and the old man started talking again, just as loud and as angry as before. My dad locked eyes with him with a very serious look on his face, which effectively quieted the guy down once more. You could tell that it was almost like he couldn't help it, and throughout the next few minutes, he was struggling to keep his voice to himself and his eyes to his own table. For some reason, it seemed as though this guy was worked up at the fact that we were sitting in the restaurant. We finished eating and began cleaning up our trash. As we did so, people were entering and exiting the establishment. A couple people with children got their food and went to the kids' play area. The old guy started to leave. He started to walk away from his table towards the exit, and I know we all breathed a sigh of relief. He was still muttering to himself and twitching angrily, but at least he was leaving us alone now. We thought that was it, but it wasn't. My dad was clearly in a bad mood now, and rushing us all so we could get back on the road. No one knew what the guy's problem was or if he had been working up to do something violent. I know that some people have issues, especially older folks, but what else were we to think? He had just seemed so pissed off for no apparent reason, which was aimed at us. It was alarming. My mom was hurrying us along to finish cleaning up our places at the table, but we were all too busy watching the strange old guy leave. That was when the old guy decided to enter the children's play area. My dad had been watching him as he walked away, perhaps for this exact reason. When my father saw him enter the kids' play area, he sprang out of his chair and sprinted over to the door of the room. I couldn't exactly see what happened, but I think the old man noticed my dad had followed him and decided to take the exit that was inside the play area. We were done getting our stuff thrown away now. I think before we left, my dad made a point to mention this guy to the employees at the counter. Maybe he wouldn't have before, but why had he gone into that room? We took our leave and didn't come across the guy again. No sign of him outside anywhere. A little background on me. I'm a 19-year-old male, and I was traveling with my girlfriend. We were on a road trip to visit my grandparents, who lived a few states away. They said we could stay at their place for a few weeks over the summer, and it seemed like a no-brainer, because they lived on a beach. The path to getting there, though, was really long, and it was a painful drive. My girlfriend and I both dislike driving, but we figured that we could take turns and it wouldn't be so miserable. I think the total time on the road was about 10 hours. We were about 5 hours into the drive when we decided to stop off at a rest stop. I'm not gonna lie to you, we stopped quite a bit. I'm a little compulsive with drinking water because I like to stay hydrated. As you might imagine, there are some consequences of being hydrated. It irritated my girlfriend to an accident, but not very much. I think she secretly liked that we were stopping on my sake and not hers, because she always seemed to buy something every time we stopped. This one rest area was not horrible or anything. It wasn't in a bad area or anything like that. It seemed like a very typical safe rest stop, but this is where one of the most horrifying experiences of my life took place. At least the first part of it. This has simply been one of the many times when I had to pull off the road to go pee. When I saw that there was also a McDonald's near this one rest area, I decided to wait until we got there. I normally don't eat McDonald's, but I let myself do it on special occasions like road trips. It makes the drive go by a little bit better, even if it makes my stomach feel like garbage. So, I went to the bathroom, and she bought more cigarettes. We had already made our way to the McDonald's when we had our first appearance with this creepy guy. We actually did talk to him a little bit. Let's call him Joe. Joe may have been the strangest looking man I've ever laid my eyes on. He looked like he didn't come from this country or something, and not on a racial basis or anything. He just looks like he had a completely different lifestyle, as if he lived off the land and had never used electricity. His beard went all the way down to his stomach, and if you looked at it for long enough, you could see food particles in there, and some of them not even from a meal that he had eaten that day. So that should give you a good idea of his level of cleanliness. The rest of his outfit followed suit. A dark pair of jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in a decade, and a large leather jacket that looks like the oldest thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm sure it actually wasn't that old, but it had a timely appearance due to it being in such poor condition. Anyway, we spoke to Joe because he awkwardly sat next to us at McDonald's. I thought this was extremely strange, and it definitely weirded me out. I'm an introvert by nature, and talking to people is extremely taxing. My girlfriend is an extrovert and always attracted people that were interested in conversation. I just found it strange because I've never had someone randomly sit at the same table as me when they were complete strangers. I figured that it was because my girlfriend attracted talkers, but looking back, it was probably because we appeared to be easy targets. Joe sat down right next to my girlfriend and started asking us where we were going. My girlfriend, being the optimistic and unsuspecting person that she is, gave him the entire story, that we were basically 5 hours away from anyone that we knew in any given direction. I tried to give her a look that she needed to shut up, but she didn't get the hint. We had already ordered our food, and we were eating when he sat down. He didn't order anything. He just invited himself to our table and talked to us for the entire time we were there. At first, he was rather polite, but had a really thick accent that didn't seem like it belonged anywhere. I couldn't tell you where the accent came from, because I've never heard anything like it in my life. And this is coming from someone who knows plenty of people from the North, Midwest, the South, Australia, and anywhere else. This accent just didn't seem like it came from Earth. After a painful experience of trying to get away from Joe, we got back in our car and started up on the journey again. As we got to our car, I also noticed that Joe had gone into his car as well. As we had pulled out, Joe was a good distance away from us. I thought this was extremely strange, and the warning signs in my head went from flashing to high alert. I knew that we were in some kind of danger. I was driving, and I tried putting the pedal to the metal. The next half hour or so, I had probably sped more than I did my entire life. I was normally a really safe driver, but this guy was really freaking me out. I tried telling my girlfriend that this guy was tailing us, but she didn't believe me. She thought I was just being paranoid. But what are the odds of seeing this guy at a gas station, and then him being behind us for 30 minutes after we get on the road? She told me to pull over at the next rest stop, and we would know for sure if he was trying to do us harm. Stupidly, that's exactly what I did, and my worst suspicion was true. He pulls off at the same rest stop and parked right next to us. My adrenaline was rushing as I got ready to fight this guy. I didn't know what else I could do. I told my girlfriend to call the police, and then I got out of the car. He was easily a foot taller than me, but he was a little older and probably not in the best shape. I had the benefit of being an athlete wannabe at my college. I did all the intramural sports stuff like that, so I was in pretty decent shape. But none of that mattered when Joe pulled out a knife. There was an immediate understanding between the two of us at that moment. The understanding that he was out to do us harm, and I was going to have to fight him. I waited for him to approach. About 30 seconds went by before he started walking in my direction. My heart was pounding. I started screaming every insult that I could. I called him a degenerate and an old man who was in way over his head, and that I was going to whip his ass. It didn't scare him though, and when he got within 10 feet of me, I thought it would be a good idea to tackle him. I was hoping to take him by surprise, but I didn't. I tried getting him off his feet and onto the floor, but when I tackled him, he plunged the knife right into my back. But that was the only good hit he got on me. I managed to get him on the floor, and after that I started kicking his head ferociously. I don't know how I managed to do it, but he was on the ground seemingly unconscious, and I was standing there. I could feel the blood flowing down my back, and I got back into the backseat of my car and yelled at my girlfriend to drive me to the nearest hospital. I was questioned a few days later at the hospital about what had happened. I guess the police showed up after we had left and found Joe still there unconscious. He was in a coma, and the police don't know what to think. Once they got mine and my girlfriend's version of the story, they seemed to believe it. So that was that. I don't know when or if Joe will ever wake up from the coma. And honestly, after he almost killed me, I kinda hope he dies. That was an extremely traumatic experience for me and my girlfriend. The good news about the situation is that I can tell people that I put someone in a coma once, and if they don't listen to me, they're next. This story happened a couple of years ago. About 8 years ago, actually. I was 10 years old at the time, and it's the reason I haven't gone back to McDonald's for nearly a decade. I never plan on going back there again, actually. The story itself is pretty unbelievable, but it is what it is. You didn't have to live through it, but I did. My mother worked a really decent job in the city. My father was out of the picture, so that left my brother and I to be taken care of by our grandparents most of the time. That's not the worst thing in the world. My grandparents are the best. But my grandmother is kind of a health freak. This meant that we weren't allowed to have any kind of sweets, sodas, junk food, or anything else that was tasty. Their house was always a lot of fun, but we never got to enjoy the food that we really wanted. So, whenever my brother and I were with our mom, we tried talking her into bringing us to McDonald's. We love going there. I particularly love the french fries, chicken nuggets, with a milkshake. I got that every single time I went. It was my absolute favorite. But as much as I loved that meal, this one experience was so bad that I never wanted it again. And it goes like this. My mom had gotten off work a little early this one day and picked us up at about 4:30 in the afternoon. This meant that she was going to be able to have enough time to bring us to McDonald's, which we had been begging her to do. We made our way there, and I remember singing some goofy song on the radio as we drove there. My brother and I were so excited, and my mom was happy that she could make us happy. My mom was not a fan of eating in the car. She really liked her car, and wanted to keep it clean, which meant no eating. So we went inside to eat. When we were in there, everything went just as you'd expect. We ordered our food, sat down, and ate. That's all there really was to it. The bad part didn't come until we started to leave. We were making our way out of the McDonald's when a Mexican man with a really strange mustache started saying something to my mom. I remember him being somewhat incoherent because of a thick accent, and many of the words were ones that I had never heard before. I immediately identified this man as problematic, and could tell by his body language that he was a threat. But after all, I was only 10 years old and couldn't do a whole lot. My mom got my younger brother into the car, put his seatbelt on, and closed the door. She told me to get into the car too. I can tell by her panicked tone of voice that she was extremely worried by this guy. No matter what he said, she didn't reply. My mom got into the driver's seat and started the car in the same motion and then went to close her door. But by this point, the man was already close enough that he could hold the door open and stop it from being closed. My mom started telling him to back off, but he only got more aggressive. He started saying stuff like, "You can't run from me, chica," and other stuff like that. That was one of the only phrases I remember him saying. Again, a lot of it was incoherent to me. My mom never did get her door closed until she started backing out anyway, and knocked this guy onto the floor. I guess he wasn't expecting her to actually go, but this only antagonized him even more. I remember watching him as my mom was peeling off. He got up immediately and ran to his car, which was only 4 parking spots away. He started it and began following us. He wasn't trying to run us off the road or anything, but he was definitely following us. I remember asking my mom what we were going to do. She said that I had to be quiet and to let her think. Well, we drove around for about 20 minutes. I could tell that it wasn't the path to go home that we always took. I remember it feeling like a really long time that we were on the road. The sun started to go down, and we all felt a lot of tension. My mom eventually had the good idea to go to the police station. She called the police on her cell phone before she got there and told them about the situation. When we got there were policemen waiting in the parking lot. Despite there being cops all over the place, this guy still followed us, parked right behind us, and got out of the car running at my mom. It was honestly horrifying. Thankfully, a police officer had tackled him, and they took care of him from there. They put him in the handcuffs and took him somewhere into the police station. They eventually brought us in and asked us questions about what had actually happened. My mom told them the whole story from start to finish, and then we went home. It was a really scary experience for me as a kid, and I still think about it sometimes. The craziest part is that this guy was confident enough to still go after my mom with police around in front of a police station. I don't know what kind of judgment he had, but whatever it was probably impaired by drugs or something. A couple of weeks later, a lawyer had contacted my mom. He was trying to prosecute this guy for multiple crimes. He claimed that this guy who had tried to abduct my mother was actually a leader in some kind of gang. It wasn't MS-13 or anything, but it was a fairly significant street gang in our area. My mom told him no, because it would mean putting herself and her kids in danger. She knew that there was going to be a risk testifying against a gang member, and she didn't trust the police officers to keep her safe. My mom didn't tell me that last part until a couple years later. I must have been 15 years old when she finally told me. I totally understand why she refused. I'm not sure whatever happened to this gang member, but he did a really good job of intimidating people into not testifying against him. I can't even imagine the kind of person this guy was. Imagine going to McDonald's, seeing a mother with 2 kids, and then wanting to abduct her, and then being crazy enough to follow her on the road for a half hour and park behind her in front of a police station. And even then, he still got out of the car and ran toward my mom.